All right, let's bring in Jeff Clavier, the soft tech VC, who's got some analysis and perspective on this big change. Jeff's a well-known angel investor in Silicon Valley and sold a company called GeoAPI to Twitter back in '09, which leaves him with a lot of Twitter shares. Joins us from Stanford University. Jeff, let me ask you right away: does this kind of big shakeup in the executive ranks show any kind of red flags to you?
No, I think Jack is definitely the inspiration behind Twitter and the simplicity of the 140 characters and the broadcasting of your status to your friends. And so him coming back to lead products is actually more of a good news than anything.
Well, companies that are going great don't change chairman like this. I mean, he left and now he's back. Surely something wasn't going the way they wanted it to.
So if you go back to in history, Jack was the original CEO of Twitter, and that was Evan Williams's sort of idea, I think, to reward him by putting him in that position. And I think it's fair to say that Jack at that time wasn't a great CEO. He admitted that himself, and that's why there was a bit of a shakeup 2 years ago when Ev replaced him. And Jack really learned from that experience, becoming, I think, one of the best promising sort of CEOs in tech with Square, and now it's sort of circling back to Twitter. I think that his inspiration around design is something that Twitter needs as they get to the next level up in terms of figuring out their monetization, figuring out how to play with their ecosystem, because there's been a few sort of rough edges there for the past 6 months. And so what you can see in the news is that the ecosystem sees that move as positive.
Jeff, I want you to take a listen to a quote from Robin Chang, an angel investor in both Twitter and Square. He says, "This is Jack's decade. Not since Steve Jobs have we seen an entrepreneur innovate with two disruptive companies. Managing his time between both companies will be a challenge. Fortunately, he is surrounded by great business leaders." So first of all, do you agree with the Steve Jobs comparison? With all due respect, Twitter is not Apple, Square is not Pixar, but what do you think about that comparison?
Maybe we could say that Jack is maybe a mini Steve Jobs in the sense that he looks after design as a real inspiration. Clearly, when I did my own research, I only came up with Steve Jobs as being a guy leading two interesting companies, and Square is growing, and I think that Jack brought a lot of management talent surrounding him at Square, including Keith Rabois, who's really well-known and really, really good, strong COO. And so that allowed him to spend more time at Twitter. We'll see whether he can get Square to $7 billion in outcome and get Twitter to be an outcome like Apple. But certainly I think that what he's learned at Square and his focus on serving his customers and the customers of his own customers is sort of interesting, and I hope that they figure out both what it means for Twitter to play the role that it has played in the past 6 months around all the disasters and all the revolutions happening in the Middle East, and figure out a way to become an economic giant the way Zynga, Groupon, and Facebook have become.
On a practical level, though, how will Jack really manage full-time roles at both of these companies? I don't think
it's going to be full-time. From my understanding, and I'm not involved in the day-to-day operation of the company, my understanding is that he will sort of lead, he will provide sort of perspective, he certainly will inject on strategic aspects with the company, but I don't think that the day-to-day will be sort of his own involvement, because there's a bunch of really high-quality, top-notch people at Twitter on the product side, and I think that it's more the inspiration and the long-term plans where Jack can really have an impact. So I don't think that there's going to be so much a draw on his time. Obviously, if he didn't have a lot of talent helping him on the operations in Square, that would be a major issue. And I think I'm actually sure that both board of directors were comfortable with that sharing of Jack before making that commitment.
Jeff, you mentioned rough edges at Twitter. What are the rough edges at Twitter?
The rough edges is what happened over the past year when essentially Twitter at the beginning said, we have twitter.com, which is our website, and a set of APIs, which allows you to build applications to tap into Twitter, the Twitter stream, and contribute. And that created a very healthy ecosystem of client applications that allow Twitter to get its initial footprint. And then a couple of years later, Twitter actually started acquiring a few of those and said, well, at the end of the day, we need to control or have a better handle on how Twitter is displayed, is made available to the public. And so we're going to call that outer core ours. And suddenly the apps became something that Twitter wanted to own. And obviously, since so much of the ecosystem had been built around those applications, and Twitter really didn't do a good job at explaining the transition and the reasons behind this. There was a lot of issues, and people were really not unhappy about those moves. And recently, they even went as far as trying to dictate the way the applications or the API should be used by the application developers. And I think that created a lot of angst and anger in the community, which is typically pretty enthusiastic around on Twitter is its growth. And so what needs to happen here is sort of step back and re-engage with all the application developers that have spent a lot of time and funding, to be honest, building Twitter. Because a lot of that growth, a lot of that usage came from those applications.
All right, Jeff Clavier, SoftTech VC, thank you so much for joining us today. Great to hear your perspective on what's going on at Twitter.